Prosperity in Black America. What will this require? Is Black business prospering? Are we reaching women and minority-owned businesses? How do we achieve earning parity for wealth for our families? Do our children really have access to education? Will our families have choices for our children? Prison pipelines, mass incarceration, tearing our families apart. A healthcare system not accessible to the masses. The disproportionate termination of Black women from corporate America. When will we actually begin to address what's really at play? How do Black people gain more power to help make these changes? This requires a lot of political will and courage. I'm that provocateur of change. I am Cindi Bright. Welcome to Heartbeat. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Heartbeat. I am your host, Cindi Bright. Thank you for joining us tonight on this conversation and this journey of prosperity for Black America. Here in the Seattle area, and I think across the country, but particularly here in Seattle, where we have a lot of tech companies, we're all reading in the news every day about the mass layoffs that are occurring. What are the implications to this for our community? We'll talk a little bit more about that in the second half of the show, but in the first half of the show, we're honored to have Ollie Garrett joining us this evening, and I'll explain why this is important. Ollie Garrett is the CEO of Tabor 100. She also sits on the Liquor Cannabis Board, and she's here this evening with us tonight to share with us the social equity application process that is coming forward from the state of Washington. This is important for us as a community to pay attention to, because what she's talking about is, these are my words, but it's an option to full-time jobs. It's a way to access some equity and stand up businesses of our own. I'll let her talk more to that, but I wanted to just give you that kind of context as we start tonight. So let me just warmly welcome and introduce, to those of you who don't know her, to those of us who do, let's welcome Ollie Garrett into Heartbeat this evening.
Thank you, Cindi, for that, and thank you for having me here this evening.
Thank you for joining us, Ollie. What's that phrase? It takes a village, and I know you have been out doing a lot of work on behalf of Black community in this area. But I wanted to give you an opportunity to come tonight and talk about some of the work that the LCB is doing and this whole social equity platform and process that is forthcoming. Please talk to our community about it and just let me know when you want us to show some of the slides about some of the dates and deadlines and so forth that are going on.
Great. So let me start by briefly giving you an overview of myself, my passion. I've served on the LCB board since August of 2016. One of the key reasons that the governor appointed me to the board was to bring my advocacy and business experience to the board as policy was being developed and regulations that was going to be impacting the industry that we regulate. As you said, I am a longtime small business owner. I'm CEO of PMT Solutions. I've served I'm on my 8th term as president of Tabor 100, which is an association working to further economic power, educational excellence, and social equity. I've been over the years recognized and the recipient of various awards. 2014 Women of Valor Award from Senator Cantwell. 2012 recipient of the Woman of the Year Award from the Bellevue Business Professional Women. 2008 recipient of the Seattle Rotary Service Above Self Award. And I'm saying this so that you and your audience can understand the passion that I have for women in minority business. That's why I dedicated my leadership and so much time and effort to Tabor 100. And it was with this passion and drive that has been driving me for social equity and social equity leadership at the Liquor Cannabis Board. And one of the things, Washington State, to give you a history, regulate the adult use of cannabis. And looking at the system, the adult use of cannabis, there was probably over $1.5 billion in sales, generating about $500 million in excess tax. And it wasn't racially diverse. In 2019, after 5 years of sales, the board took a look at the marketplace, and retailers in this industry was thriving, but we wanted to understand how racially set up the system was and how racially diverse the system was, due to the fact that racial minorities were disproportionate harmed by the war on drugs. And when we took a look at the data, and after reviewing the data, what we saw was only 4% of self identified in the industry was Black, 4% was multiracial, and 2% was Hispanic. So, what we did in 2020, in an effort to learn what happened and to hear directly from the community, we did a series of outreach meetings facilitated by Dr. Caprice Hollins, and we listened to the community. At the outreach meetings, we heard firsthand from people who was left out of the system, despite the communities that they're from was being disproportionately harmed by the war on drugs. I-502, it did not include any provision for social equity or opportunity for those communities harmed by the war on drugs to benefit from the legalization of cannabis. And that was an opportunity that was lost. So, to address that, the agency introduced House Bill 2870. And from listening to the community, hearing all of the stories that we heard about the harm that was done to them, being left out of the industry, we introduced the bill 2870 that became a law, and it created what was called the Social Equity Task Force. And from that task force, they issued recommendations to the LCB to adopt, to create what we have today as our social equity um, in cannabis coming into fruition. So the rules were completed. We have a third party independent reviewer that's going to be looking over the application and scoring the applications. We have started the process of going to the communities, putting on different workshops to educate people, to have them to start making sure that they understand what they need in order to get into the industry. The first set of the applications, we have 44 license that has been held in reserve for this social equity program. And those 47 license, we are opening up March 1st for people to be able to apply for those licenses. The slide that if you can bring forward.
Yep, we'll bring it right up here. Mhm. Can you see it, Ollie?
Yes. So
Okay.
what the slide is showing you is just yesterday we did our first set of webinars. We had two yesterday, one at 10 a.m. and one at 7. And we went through the complete checklist of what people would need in order to qualify and apply for those licenses. We will be using a consulting firm called Make Green Go, and they're working with us to host the webinars. And one of the things we're going to put on four of those, there's going to be another set coming up. I think it's in a couple of weeks of and that's where anyone who's interested can sign in on our website, register for it. Yesterday, I think we had about 232 people that attended the webinar. So the next one is January the 28th at 10 a.m. and one is going to be at 7 p.m. You definitely need to register. You can go onto our website and register for it. But it's going to cover all of the specifics about the application process, the qualification for a social equity and cannabis license, the documents that you're going to need to gather, and additional information and any other questions and you might have on how do you qualify and what do you need to do to make sure you're ready. The license allotment, we that the map would be available for that on the website. We've actually sent out letters to all of the local municipalities to let them know this is coming, so they are ready for this when you start looking for locations. You're going to find on the website what's called the DIA map, where you can take a look to see if you lived in a DIA and meet some of the requirements that's going to happen to go along with these licenses in order to qualify. And our goal is to to see that we can get every people ready, fully understanding what they're going to need, seeing if they're qualified, do they qualify, and to make sure that they don't miss the opportunity by not being informed on everything that's required to be ready for these social equity license.
So can I just repeat back what I believe I heard? I'm going to do it in kind of I'm just going to say the C spot run version of what you just said. So what you just said is that uh, an application process is going to open in March that will allow, there have been 44 designations for licenses for businesses in the cannabis space to be licensed. And what you're offering is some education around not just how to apply for the license, but what the process is to get the license and be able to stand up cannabis businesses. Am I correct in rephrasing that to you?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. And so, what's important for our community is that, you know, as we drive towards equity, equity means that there is a disproportionate amount of resources that are given into spaces. In this particular space, it's cannabis, it's the war on drugs that has disproportionately impacted Black communities. Are there particular area code, no, zip codes? I always get that confused. Are there zip codes that are designated to this application process of which people are able to qualify for?
The map, what's called a DIA area map, is on the website. So a person can go on to the website, they can put in their address, and they can see whether or not that was considered what we call a DIA area. We're still looking at that and keeping an eye on that to make sure that we are going to get and see what we need to out of that DIA map.
What
But
does
it's
DIA
right on
stand
the
for?
website.
What does that stand for, DIA?
Disproportionate impact area.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So for our viewers and listeners, particularly those, I'm going to make some assumptions about distressed areas. Uh, there's several areas here in the King County area. Does this include Pierce County also,
It's
Ollie?
statewide.
It's statewide.
Yeah.
Okay, so
And
anywhere across.
how we the indicators of how we came up with it is the area has a high poverty rate. It has a high rate of participation in income-based federal programs. It had a high rate of unemployment and a high rate of convictions.
What was the last one? The high rate of what?
Convictions.
Commissions. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay, that is incredibly helpful information. And you said that there were webinars that people can learn how this process works. Let me ask the question, when people go apply for those licenses and they obtain them, I'm assuming part of this is a training program on how to help people stand up these businesses?
But and that's separate, and I think it's through commerce, but they're it's a tech. There are supposed to be technical assistant, and all of this information is on the website. But
Okay.
Commerce is going to have a technical assistant program to work with the people as they're getting prepared, to see what the challenges are, work through it, and to do whatever we can to help those that are applying as a social equity applicant to be ready and successful once they obtain a license.
Okay. Do you have a sense with the other licenses, other cannabis licenses that are out there? Do you have a sense on the kind of revenue that those cannabis stores bring in? Like, I'm just trying to help the community incent why this is a really good option for wealth building and earning parity.
Like I said in the beginning, it was over, I think when we took a look at it back in 2019, the revenue, I had it here in my documents, but I got the documents now for the process, but the revenue was is very lucrative. Um, this is what happens when I move my notes.
No, it's okay. I don't. You don't have to pull them up. I just wanted to just try to help educate the community on. Um, this isn't kind of like a, to compare it to. I'll just compare it to my company, right? My business, which is a consulting firm. Like when you think about the upside potential in this space of cannabis, in a space of what has been used against Black communities that is now being offered to Black community to help get licensed and get into some earning parity and earning power, it's pretty substantial from what I understand. And so this is a phenomenal opportunity for people who, even if they have jobs now, should be thinking about this as an option for, I have continued to say that wealth and freedom is built when we have our own businesses and can do things for ourselves. So I think this is an option, and there are 44 available licenses that come available on March the 1st for the community. Correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And I found it was so in 2019 when we took a look at this, there was over 1.5 billion dollars in sales.
Okay. You mean collectively from all the cannabis groups?
Yes. Well,
Okay.
in retail, yes.
In the retail stores.
Mhm.
And I looked at some numbers. Correct me because I'm not precise on this, and I'll make an editorial comment about it. But I think there's like 300 and some odd licenses available in the state of Washington, and we're starting off with 44 of them being designated for distressed communities. Is that correct?
Um, the total license that was allocated for this for the state was 400 and something, and out of
Okay.
that 400 and something there's 300. I don't know the exact number, but that's how we ended up with the 44, is these are licenses that were in use or have come back to us to be
Okay.
used for the social equity program.
And is it the intention of the state of Washington to potentially increase that number when these licenses are up after this initial number is obtained?
Yes, so that brings me to the agency just introduced another bill, House Bill 5080, and that bill is to where we can increase the license, more retail license. We can make the license more mobile. um, there was several things in that bill for new license under social equity to be more mobile, increase it based on the census data, and to have more available than just the 44 that we got back.
Are you able to share, does our community, have they started applying for these licenses? Like kind of where are we in the 44
No, the
application?
opening is March 1st.
March 1st. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. How many, do you know this off the top of your head? I don't expect you to pull up any sheets. Like, how many of the cannabis licenses are currently existent here in the state of Washington that are owned by BIPOC communities?
Well, the percentages, I think I said 4% was Black,
Okay,
4% was multiracial, 2% was Hispanic, very low percentage.
very low.
And the
So,
only we get the race is self-identified race, but we only get that information when they've gone through the license process and now have to do the criminal background, and that's when we obtain the race for the ones that are currently in.
So how does, if the process includes a criminal background check, and there has been a historically disproportionate amount of cannabis related incarceration challenges that are there, how does that play itself out? Like, will that create harm for people who have criminal backgrounds in the cannabis space or any other criminal background to be able to obtain a license?
Well, that's as I stated earlier, part of the qualification is a prior conviction. The DIA map and things were based on that. So that some folks, and when we were doing our community meetings, that they felt like that kept them out, but that's not what we're going to be looking at now. That's not part of a criteria any longer.
Okay, perfect. Okay, this is just incredibly helpful information to have to get out to our communities. And I know we're trying in all the different venues to get this information to the public.
Right.
What is the website, Ollie, that people can go to find this?
If you put that slide back up, it's at the bottom of the slide.
Okay, so let me see if I can actually see it.
Maybe it's just the questions.
It's okay. It's on there. I'm halfway blind, so I can't see it on my prompter. But to our community who's looking at it, here is the slide that has the information. The website is on the bottom of it. To our community, the viewers who are watching this, again, I'm going to reiterate, this is another great opportunity. I'll put this on my list for the last week in February to make sure I remind the community that this is opening up March the 1st for people to apply. Any final thoughts, Ollie, before we go to commercial break?
No, I just encourage people to go to that website and start looking at what you're going to need in order to apply, and to see if you're qualified and what needs to take place in order for you to get qualified. Those webinars that we're having, and the next one is January the 28th, though it's going to be very important because it walks you step by step through the process and what's going to take place. So that's going to be January the 28th. We put it on a Saturday. The first one is going to be at 10 a.m. that day. The other one is going to be 7 p.m. But all of the updated information and as things update is on the website instantly.
Okay, I really appreciate you coming on this evening with us, Ollie, to update and educate our community. Thank you also. Let me just take a moment to say thank you for being that woman out there in our community, that Black woman out there in the community who is shaking things up, making things work for our community, and helping Black America to prosper. We're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we'll be right back.
Half that up in sacks, I favor Black businesses. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's Black. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey guys, Basic Gordon here, and before heading to Belize, Trey Holiday and I had to make sure we linked up with our good friends over at Market Street Shoes to, of course, grab a few things for the trip. From bags to socks, shoes, sunglasses, earrings, and more. Before going on any trip, make sure you stop at Market Street Shoes. Trust me, you'll find just what you need to make your trip not only enjoyable, but fashionable.
Pacific Northwest Ballet unveils Giselle, ballet's classic tale of romance, betrayal, and immortal love. The New York Times calls it a triumph, comparable to an epic film. This stunning production is touched by magic. Order tickets now at pnb.org.
Welcome back to Heartbeat. I am your host, Cindi Bright. This evening in our first part of the show, we were just honored to have Ollie Garrett, who is the CEO of Tabor 100. She sits on the LCB Liquor Cannabis Board, and she was sharing with our community some important information about licenses that are coming available to apply for on March the 1st. An important thing for our community to pay attention to. This is an opportunity for a business license in the cannabis space to earn some lucrative money and do some things for your lives and for your family. There are 44 licenses opening up, so I'm encouraging everyone to take advantage of these opportunities, even if you're employed. I say this to people all the time. Let's look at, these are coming out in distressed areas. So let's take a look at these licenses and let's get ourselves some businesses to help us to be able to prosper here in the future. I want to welcome in the second half my Heartbeat regular commentators with us as we're going to talk about several things on the second half of the show. Let me welcome in Joy Stanford, Karen Fleshman, and Stefani Coverson with me this evening. Hey, ladies, how are you this evening? Pretty good? All right. Well, I wanted to, having Ollie come on and talk about opportunities for businesses, standing up businesses for people, for Black people. We're all watching what's going on now in 24 days here, or 25 days into 2023, and there are massive layoffs starting to happen. A lot of the tech company is shedding people. Karen, I think probably in the Silicon Valley, that's probably hitting as well. I just wanted to welcome a conversation about the impact that you are already seeing, feeling, or hearing about people losing their work, their jobs, and kind of what you're picking up on the street about what's happening. I'm going to start with you, Stefani. Do you have any insight into this whole topic of job loss?
Oh, absolutely. So I'm hearing a couple of things, particularly in the tech industry, that women and women of color are making up roughly 45-ish% of layoffs, which is disproportionate considering that only about a third are in the workforce and less than a quarter make up the technical and the leadership roles. So I'm hearing that. And then also that these layoffs are anticipated to roll back what minimal at best efforts have been made in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion, because those are typically one of the first line items to be cut. And then also the efforts that have been made to recruit folks from various diverse backgrounds. Typically, the easy fix to identify who's going to be laid off is last in, first out. And so, just demolishing and dismantling these efforts from all angles.
I just want to highlight, Stephanie, while you're answering this question, I want to remind the audience, Stephanie does own and run Jamais Pay Consulting. And so she has a firm that is focused on, I'll just say, human capital. So there's a lot of things that she does in that space. And I just want to give you credit for that, because you definitely have your feet on the ground when it comes to working with marginalized communities, people that in the business space of what you're seeing and hearing. Karen, what about down in the San Francisco area? What's going on down there?
Yeah, massive layoffs at all of the big, they call them FANG companies, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, Google, Apple. And what is so distressing is that these layoffs are completely unnecessary. These companies have so much cash on hand. For example, last year, right around this time, Microsoft acquired a video game company, Activision Blizzard, and they paid $68.7 billion in all cash, right? So it's not as if these companies are hurting and revenue is down. It's just all the revenue is going to the 1% and to the shareholders. And yeah, they're ruining people's lives by laying off people, thousands of people at once.
I think that, thank you for that, Karen and Stephanie. Joy, I'm going to bring you here in just a second because I want to hear more about your lens from the nonprofit world. For those of us who have been inside of business, and I'll just use the quote, big business, the very first roles to go, I was just reading an article about it today, are definitely the contractors, right? So that impacts small business. And let's just be clear that many of Black people, Black women, own our own businesses to get away from the toxicity of what we have all had to live in. And these are the first businesses that are targeted to be the consulting agreements. I've heard the term outside in. So the outside in money to bring external people in first to go. So let's just start there. Secondly, as a former HR executive, Stephanie is also a former HR executive, the functional roles, the roles that are not profit and loss centered roles, are usually cut too because they are extreme overhead. Again, this will impact Brown and Black communities substantially. And so to Karen's point about where the impact is having, this is why we're having these conversations, because we know where the hit is going to impact and then what the impact is going to be to our communities when that happens. Joy, let me bring you in. Do you have a sense, I know you work in a large nonprofit, or a big nonprofit, I should say, but and it's a political organization. What are you hearing about any of the job layoffs, number one, and number two, do you have a lens? I realize your nonprofit is not focused on wealth per se, but you are definitely in a political space. Any conversations happening that you're aware of about how Washington State will address and deal with what I'm going to call the disproportionate termination of Black businesses, Brown and Black businesses here in the Seattle, Washington State area?
Right now, I don't have a finger on that pulse, but I will say I'm more at the grassroots level around what's happening with these massive layoffs. I'm from California, so I have friends who have been laid off, could not get in to their email with Twitter and that whole drama that happened there. But I continue, even this past weekend, to have conversations with people who are frightened at Amazon of losing their jobs, whose spouse or significant other or partner has been laid off from the Googles and the Apples and the Microsofts of the world. So, and then what do you do in that situation? I've not heard on our C4 side, because we've got, like you said, Washington Conservation Action has both a C4 side and a C3 side, but politically I've not heard if there's any bills that are coming up that are going to address this. Some of the major things was public safety in our last election. So I think it's heavily focused on that. And then our organization is focused on climate and everything environmental. But it's interesting that we have the conversation that Ollie was here tonight, because I found out this past weekend that there's only one, I believe, maybe two cannabis companies or retailers that are Black owned. And I found that interesting. I was like, wait, what? And then to know now that we've got 44 licenses coming up. We need to get in on this ground floor, understanding that there's money to be made there. But I think there's so many questions surrounding it. So I want to say thank you to Ollie for being here tonight, and you, Cindi, for addressing that. But I think we're all going to be touched by all of these layoffs.
It's a good point. One of the reasons why I was asking Ollie about, how many licenses are out there and how many are available. When you think about it, what we know about equity is that it takes not an equal amount, but more to be able to right the wrongs. And so I think, for our community, there's 44 licenses available. And I think she used a 400 and some number as what's out there. So that is still, my math, what is it? 10%. So if we think about, but we have to take those licenses, we have to fill those up, we have to apply for those and get businesses started that way in order to help leadership in the state of Washington. And look, this is across the country, right? This just got approved in New York City, where they've just started licensing, or they just approved legislation around cannabis. And so for us to advocate for more, we've got to take what's there, what's available for us right now. And so we need to get word out to our communities about what's available. And then we need to encourage people who want to step into the space. I know not everybody has ever thought of owning a cannabis shop. I never contemplated being on TV. So it doesn't, you can start someplace or you can take a step someplace. You just kind of never know where things are going to lead, but it is certainly a way out of Plantation 2.0 that we talked about a couple of weeks ago.
I think it's just interesting. The conversation that I had this weekend was, where are the minority-owned cannabis retailers? And then it was, is there any female? Are there any Black female? Are there, we went deep and we all were standing there like, what do you mean there's no Black female-owned retail cannabis? Just in shock,
Do you all remember, though, the Sean Kemp controversy that happened in 2020?
A percentage of owner in the one that,
So they touted this cannabis business that was going to open up in, I believe, the Seattle area. And, Sean Kemp Cannabis, it was going to have his name and everything. And we were so excited that there was going to be this Black-owned marijuana store. And as it turns out, it absolutely was not. And so they paid maybe Sean Kemp 5% for the use of his name. And when all of this reporting was coming out, I don't think his approval to be on the license had even come out. And then this was on the back of a situation with a Black man who actually was a medical marijuana store owner prior to 2012, when marijuana for recreational use had been passed with the initiative. And so just the way that he had been treated, and his office, his store locations raided, and based on the story that he shared, just the disparate way in which he and another Black man had been treated through that process as criminals. And his white business partners were not.
I'm going to go to take a quick commercial break, and I'm going to pick back up where you just left off, Stephanie. So hold that thought. We'll be right back.
Half that up in Saks, I favor Black businesses. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's Black.
Prosperity in Black America. What will this require? Is Black business prospering? Are we reaching women and minority-owned businesses? How do we achieve earning parity for wealth for our families? Do our children really have access to education? Will our families have choices for our children? Prison pipelines, mass incarceration, tearing our families apart. A healthcare system not accessible to the masses. The disproportionate termination of Black women from corporate America. When will we actually begin to address what's really at play? How do Black people gain more power to help make these changes? This requires a lot of political will and courage. I'm that provocateur of change. I am Cindi Bright. Welcome to Heartbeat.
Will you marry me, baby?
Yeah.
Let me put this on you.
What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Trey Holiday. We're bringing back Black Love When We Met. That's right. We need something to warm all of our hearts and to elevate love once again in our communities. We want y'all to go to whereweconverge.com/Black Love so y'all can nominate your favorite couple for the next rendition of this show with me as the host. Let me sit down and have them on my couch and share how their love can inspire us all. Make sure y'all go and get your nominations in today and be on the lookout for Black Love When We Met coming at you on Converge Media very soon.
Welcome back to Heartbeat. I am your host, Cindi Bright. Let me bring back in our commentators this evening, Joy Stanford, Stefani Coverson, Karen Fleshman with me tonight. Right before we went to commercial, Stefani, you were talking about we were discussing the cannabis licensing process that's coming out. We were discussing the fact that what happened with Sean Kemp when he was a part of this equation, and it is kind of the larger umbrella, I guess I would say, is about the snubbing of Black people, right? Black people who are in any spaces. And we see that all over the news now, right? We see even outside of the cannabis, we are watching, I don't know if any of you have caught what has gone on or what is going on with the Oscars. And so the snubbing of Viola Davis and the young woman who is the actress in Till. So this common thread around discluding Black people, discluding Black America in any of these processes. Let me bring you back in, Stefani, and finish your thoughts about some of what you were talking about with Sean Kemp, because this thread of an issue around Black people prospering is at the forefront of Heartbeat's conversation every week. Do you want to talk some more about that?
Sure, absolutely. So I think it's important to recognize the disproportionality of Black folks getting arrested, imprisoned, jailed for marijuana use, right? And, I'll just say that from my perspective, the marijuana industry was built on the backs of Black culture. And so marijuana was cool, I guess, lack of a better word, in our community before it sort of reached this mainstream sort of popularity. And so to see this happening and then seeing it legalized in state after state after state, and I will say really lackluster efforts to pardon Black and brown folks who are who have served jail or prison time for simple marijuana possession, while now folks are clamoring now to get these business licenses because they see the value on how they can personally prosper from an industry that, again, was interwoven into Black culture, Black hip hop culture, as well as, frankly, when we were shut out of education for not having the money to go to college and trade school, or just shut out of the employment industry statistically, that, this was a way that folks made money. And
So
so
when
to
you
see that sort of now, it's okay, it's cool now. So it's
Right.
fine for them to do it. But it was horrific, when this was happening in the Black community.
were you going to say something, Joy?
I was going to say, as people were trying to feed their families, and that all the hip hop songs say it. Biggie was one of the first to say, "I'm trying to feed my daughter as a single dad, and make this money, and I'm being arrested for it." Many of my friends went to jail when I was in my late teens, early 20s, for selling it, and now you can buy it on the corner at a store,
Yeah.
at a retail shop. So I find it highly interesting, but sad that we don't play a part of it. Like Stephanie said, she put it so well. It was growing on the backs of Black folks. So,
Well, we have an opportunity now, and what Stephanie politely said, that I'll say a little bit more candidly, is that I hear you laughing, Joy. Is that while Black people can be locked up for profit, it's a big deal. And then when Black people are no longer held hostage to being criminalized for smoking a joint, then now the same people who locked us up are the same people who now are getting the licenses and prospering from an industry that they tore generations of families apart for. This is an important conversation, because even though we don't want to call it out for that way, or we call it out off camera, this is a reality of what we're dealing with as a diverse community. And so this is why it's important, and why I wanted to have Ollie on with us tonight, because we have 44 licenses coming available that go to distressed communities. So we need to get word out about these licenses available, to say to people, they're going to train. Did you hear me ask her the question? They're going to train people like what to do on it. Like, learning to run a business, start a business and running it. I mean, none of us, I have a business, Karen has a business, Stephanie has a business. Like, we've all learned through putting our feet, right, stepping 2 feet into it and figuring out what it is that we need to do to be able to do it and to be able to prosper.
Can I make a quick point? I just want to put a fine point on something. So Black folks and white folks use recreational drugs at the same rate, right? But because our communities and the skin that Black folks live in are over policed and over prosecuted, we are more likely to be put in jail, have been put in jail for marijuana possession. And even though Governor Inslee did sign a proclamation or whatever to pardon folks, it was between a specific time frame. You had to ask for it. So I'm assuming to be petitioning courts and governor's offices require an attorney and cost money. I could be wrong. I think the governor's office estimated about 3,500 people were eligible for this pardon program, and 30 something so far have been pardoned. And so if you have multiple misdemeanor marijuana convictions, then you don't qualify for that program, which then disproportionately excludes people who actually know this business, grew this business before it was legal to do this business. And they can't capitalize on the fruits of their ingenuity, their entrepreneurship, as you know, as well as the action plan to get in on this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great.
Everything
Nicely done.
everything you're describing happening in Washington happens in California too. You know, we were one of the earlier states to legalize marijuana.
Right.
And then immediately there was this gold rush of white mega investors creating, you know, cannabis delivery companies and just expending tremendous amounts of money. Meanwhile, the actual cannabis growers in California still sell on the illegal market. It's not profitable to do the legitimate business. So they're still doing the underground cannabis economy. And cannabis in California, I think, is like a $5.6 billion industry, and only 4% of the owners are Black. In Oakland, there's actually a cannabis equity initiative. And huge shout out to U.S. Congresswoman Barbara Lee, who represents Oakland, who has been national champion of cannabis equity. And going back to the point of snubbing Black people. So I don't know if you've been following this, but Senator Dianne Feinstein is now like 89. She is clearly way past her prime. She's pretty senile, actually. And she hasn't announced whether or not she will run again. But Katie Porter, it was basically sort of common knowledge that Barbara Lee was going to get that seat to become the next U.S. Senator from California. Katie Porter, who is a white woman who represents Orange County, announced that she was going to run for Dianne Feinstein's seat, and in like one day raised $30 million.
Is that a good thing, Karen?
No, it's not, because we should be gathering Barbara Lee. We need Barbara Lee in the U.S. Congress. And I mean, you know, there's many good aspects of Katie Porter. I like her whiteboard, and I think she does a great job of you know, holding corporations to account, and she's very good at like communicating. But Barbara Lee is like the one person who refused to sign off on invading Iraq because she did not think that there was compelling evidence of weapons of mass destruction. Like Barbara Lee has like, you know, she was a Panther. She was Shirley Chisholm's mentee. Like Barbara Lee has like this legacy of service and like deep understanding of women's issues, the issues of Black people, people of color. She's this incredible leader. She's exactly who we need. And all the glory is going to like Katie Porter.
Another white woman just stepping up to run for office. And I knew there was something shenanigans going on in the background, but here's a moment for California to have Barbara Lee, or there's so many other women I can name too in California, women of color, to step into that space and show that we've got diversity, that women of color can make change and have made change. And we're holding court for, God bless her soul, Katie Porter, but come on, we could do better. We know better, do better.
Yeah.
Well, I noticed
hashtag follow Black women, except for when we want to lead, except for when it's actually time to do it.
Well, you know, there was actually a really good TikTok video by a white woman. I don't know if you all saw this. a white woman, younger, who talked about how she became a teacher at the same time 3 other women did, um, 2 of whom were Black. And one of those teachers started excelling. Like she would, her kids were thriving, like her test scores were out the off the charts. And this white woman was like, she felt bad about that. She felt like that was wrong. And she realized that she had internalized that Black women were inferior. Black women, were not as capable as white women. And so when this Black woman was outperforming her, she felt taken aback by that. And I was so grateful to her for making that video, because listen, the first time I reported to a Black woman boss, I walked in the room. I mean, I knew I was going to be meeting my boss. I saw it was a Black woman and my jaw dropped. Like I just had an image in my head of what a boss looks like. And I was like shocked when I saw her. I think this conversation about white women learning how to follow and learning what is our role,
Give space.
multicultural democracy. Exactly.
Make space, people. Make space. I don't understand why it's so not normal for white women to do that. But when they do that, that's when everyone thrives.
Yes.
Just that one gesture, that's when everyone thrives. And this was the moment for California to me. I have been like, come on, we've got to merge women there. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. And now, seriously, I did not, because I don't watch news, I did not read about that Katie Porter. I did not. $30 million.
Yeah.
Black women take forever to raise money, and she raises $30 million in a weekend. Come on.
I knew that it was going to be a situation with the social media post, her kickback reading the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F. And so I was like, now that's very interesting. What's going to come after that? And so it was sort of this attention gathering sort of momentum thing. And then this announcement comes out.
Yes. And I did not realize someone wrote a Medium post about the author of The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F is a white supremacist.
What?
Yes.
That's a whole nother show, ladies.
I purchased
there was
that
condemnation
book.
Of her.
Take it back. Take it back, Stephanie. Take it back.
How do you get a refund for an Audible that you?
Where'd you get that book from?
I want all my coins back.
Oh, there she is.
Oh my gosh.
There you
are. You're having a good time.
But all of this to come back to, prior to the pandemic, a report came out that said median Black net wealth will be 0 by 2053. And that was before the pandemic. What was that statistic? Like I often say racism, highly profitable, anti-racism, not so much. Like racism remains a huge source of profit.
Your microphone's not working.
And we have to address that. Oftentimes I get like overwhelmed when I think about the intersection of racism and capitalism, because I'm like, can we just work on ending racism? But they are deeply intertwined.
Yeah, yes. We're over here trying to build generational wealth. We're still trying to build generational wealth and leave our.
Are you able to hear me? Are you guys able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I'm sorry to have to test my mic during the show.
No worries.
I agree with that, Karen. The notion of racism is profitable, and I do believe that biggest part of why these DEI efforts and work towards anti-racism is not funded or supported in business, because while organizations want to say that they are moving forward, they clearly are not. All of the data is showing that right now. I lost you guys for a few minutes, but I just wanted to come back to the political seats that we were talking about in California. Katie Porter, I think you guys were talking about her performative gesture around the subtle art of not giving an F and how that caught a lot of press, and probably intentional on her part so that it could be focused on getting herself into an elected seat. But we know that there is a Black woman who is running for that seat as well. And so I just encourage our communities to pay attention to these gestures. Again, we must ensure that the right people are elected into office, not just people who perform and want to pretend like they are going to look out for our communities. Final thoughts from our team here of before we end for the evening. Final thoughts about this whole topic of equity in the social equity space.
Well, God bless Ollie, and thank you for doing that outreach and making sure that the community knows about these things. And could we also give them the capital so that they not only, have the license, but can profit from it? And it's not this thing with like the 5% ownership and someone else is making all the money.
Right. Good point. I'm hoping that her webinar, hoping that that's covered in that process, that there's actually lucrative money put behind it. Look, we're at the hour, and I want to thank all of you who come on, Joy, Stephanie, and Karen, every week with me here to talk about this, and to our community who joins us for this conversation every week. Next week we start Black History Month. Let me leave Karen on here with me for a second. Next week, we are going to dive into some Black excellence. And next week, we are bringing on some members of the California, San Francisco Reparations Committee and get to hear the phenomenal work that they're doing, that they're leading in California around reparations for Black community. I think it's going to be an exciting conversation because we need to ensure that we get that work duplicated or what's the right word? Copied here in Washington State so that we can start righting some of these wrongs. So thank you all for joining me tonight. To our viewers who joined, thank you for being with us this evening, and we look forward to seeing you next Wednesday evening. Have a good evening, everybody.
Half that up in Saks, I favor Black businesses. Assuming I'm rooting for everybody that's Black. Yeah.
Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. Support Converge Media today via Venmo, Cash App, or PayPal at Converge Media.